I don't really know what the Cowboys are doing, period. I really don't understand. I don't know how by far the team that makes the most money and is worth the most money can also be the team that might be the worst contract team in the entire league.
Yeah, because they don't go aggressively, proactively to get the guys locked up long term. They wait too long and pay too much.
I am blown away by the strategy. And Jerry Jones says he wants to see some more hands get played. Like, what I would want to say to Jerry Jones is, what would have to happen for you to not give CeeDee Lamb a new contract?
Exactly.
Does he have to rupture both patella quad tendons? Like what would have to happen for him not get, or like Micah Parsons? Just so everybody knows, and I live near there and I do their preseason games, so I'm biased, blah, blah, blah. But like Micah Parsons and CeeDee Lamb, if they played for the Philadelphia Eagles, would both already be signed through like 2028. Okay?
Oh, yeah.
They would be. They would be.
What? Why are you shaking your head?
You're welcome.
All across the fantasy universe, welcome everyone. John, we've got a really fun guest on episode number 3 of the Fantasy Points podcast. Someone who is not only a former player, but is a broadcaster and a businessman in the content creation game. I'm excited to talk to one Ross Tucker, and I'm interested to hear how you guys connected.
Yeah, what's up, Brian? Absolutely thrilled to have our guy Ross Tucker, my guy, here on the show. We were just talking in the green room, the virtual green room, about how I feel like I am a fantasy broadcasting guru. Basically, I can predict who's going to have a great future career in broadcasting. And Ross and I met 2010. I just tested him and he passed Radio Row. He had just gotten out of the league and he was very, very much interested in the broadcasting thing. We chopped it up a little bit, maybe exchanged numbers or something, but I knew it at that time. Like, yeah, this guy's going to do it. Of course, he went to Princeton. But what's up, Ross? It's great to see you.
Yeah, great to see you guys. Thank you for having me. I love what you guys doing with the new show. Pumped to be a part of it. And it's so funny because when you talk about that, John, like immediately 2 things pop in my head, right? Number one, I don't know if I've ever told you this, but I grew up wanting to be a broadcaster.
Wow.
I would say I wanted to be a football player until like 6th grade. And then I was like the last kid in my grade to go through puberty.
Wow.
And so 7th, 8th, and 9th grade, like people are bigger than me and all that stuff.
Man.
And my dad is 5'9", $165.
That I know. Yeah.
So I was like, yeah, I'm not going to be a pro football player. That's not going to happen. But I was obsessed with Sports Illustrated. Like my school would only keep in the library the previous 10 years Sports Illustrateds.
Yeah.
So when it would go to 94, they would give me all the 83 Sports Illustrateds, and I would go back and read through like the 83 Sports Illustrated.
Totally.
So I wanted to be a broadcaster.
That's awesome.
And so I was going to go to like Syracuse or something. And then, I gained 3 inches. I averaged 3 inches and 30 pounds a year from 8th grade through my senior year.
Wow.
Like every year. And so then I got the opportunity to go to Princeton and play football there. And then what's weird is in the NFL, I didn't do any broadcasting stuff. Like when I was with the Cowboys, I interned for Roger Staubach's commercial real estate company, the Staubach Company. I guess I thought, I went to Princeton, I can do one of these, highfalutin jobs or whatever. Plus, when you're a player, so many guys say they're going to be broadcasters, and I could tell that the best jobs went to like, the Hall of Fame type players. So
But they normally are not good broadcasters.
Yes. And I just kind of forgot about I don't think I forgot about it, but I was just leaning in on other things. And then I went to the NFL's first ever broadcast boot camp in 2007.
NFL
I
film.
literally thought I would do finance in New York City,
Wow.
but I had to do something football. So I thought maybe I would just do the Princeton games on the radio. Cause like you know how I am. Like I am obsessed. I love the sport.
Yeah, yeah.
So I went to the broadcasting boot camp and I met like Steve Cohen from Sirius XM. I met Howie Deneroff from Westwood One. And next thing I know, I get hurt against the Ravens. I'm doing the Princeton games on the radio. I'm starting doing stuff for Sirius XM. I'm doing stuff for, you know, I got a job with Comcast. Like I had like 3 gigs while I was still on IR getting paid by Washington, which I always tell players now, hey, if you know you're going to retire, IR your last year is a great way to go out.
And you showed while the iron was hot because, you know, if you're out of the league a year or two, it might have been a little more difficult. Maybe not with your drive, but also you can comment on like you kind of started out from a fan perspective, and maybe that's why you resonate with the audience and the fans very well, because you kind of went a little while there thinking you were, well, I'm not going to be a pro athlete. I'm just like everybody else, just a fan.
It's so funny that you say that because what you like, I remember somebody did an article on me and they asked Justin Bannon, one of our defensive tackles. Remember Justin Bannon?
Yeah.
D tackle. They asked Bannon like to describe me, and they said he's like the biggest football fan you've ever met.
Yeah.
That actually happened to be good enough to be able to play.
Yeah.
That was how he described me. Because there's some guys, do you know, like Matt Light had never watched a college football game until he went to Purdue. He had never watched an NFL game until he played in one. Some guys are not into it. They're not into watching it.
Right.
They like to just play. So anyway, that's not me.
They don't, and if they are, Ross, they don't care about the other positions either, right? Like the guards, they're not tracking a corner and how they're doing.
I'm blown away. I'm actually blown away that guys can have that much success not loving it. Now, I do think I think they love playing, because playing and watching it are very different, but I think they love playing. But I love, like no joke, okay? If I'm doing a college or NFL game, but definitely college on a Saturday, Friday night, I am in my hotel looking at my phone and my laptop watching high school football games. Like that's me. Or if I'm not driving around trying to find lights somewhere and just to go to a high school football game, primarily for the national anthem, so that I can get goosebumps and my eyes can fill up during the national anthem. Like that, like I seek that out.
Wow.
But I love that you guys are doing this podcast and that you're killing it. It's funny. I don't know if I ever told Brian, you definitely never heard this story. You know, I'm like the luckiest podcast guy of all time, right? So, and when we met right before we met, Hanson, I got hired away from Sports Illustrated by ESPN to write for ESPN. They're going to pay me more money than Sports Illustrated was paying me to write. I said, okay, great. They said, we also would like you to host our football podcast. And I was like, sure, I would love to. Yeah. Literally, Brian, I had no idea what a podcast was. Never even heard of it. I mean, I had like a Droid Razor phone. You know. So anyway, I started hosting there. I just knew they were going to pay me money to talk about football. So I went, and next thing I know, it's really popular because it was like the only football podcast around in 2009, 10, and 11.
Wow.
So it did very, very well. And so I kind of started to talk to some of the sponsors and some of the ad agencies, and I realized how much money they were paying. And I thought, interesting. So long story short, next thing you know, I started the Ross Tucker Football Podcast. A year later, I started the Fantasy Feast. Year after that, thank goodness, I started a betting podcast, the Even Money Podcast. And so I guess I've had the whole network now for like 11 years. And it all started because they asked me if I wanted to host a podcast, and I had no idea what it was. Wow. So I can't really claim anything other than being right place, right time.
Hold that thought. I can't wait to dig into more about the Fantasy Feast and the Gambling Podcast. But you talk about all that ad money that they're making. Let's go pay some bills. We'll be back with Ross Tucker on the other side. All right, guys, back here with Ross Tucker, host of the Ross Tucker podcast. You've got this whole family of this network of podcasts. Our guy Joe Dolan, who I've hosted shows with for 2 years now, does your Fantasy Feast. And I'm curious. You've got the football podcast. You've got the fantasy podcast. Now you're doing gambling. In terms of interaction, in terms of downloads, revenue, can you see sort of where the NFL's going? And if you had to pivot a certain way, like, do you kind of see where the markets are flowing in terms of with those different specific podcasts?
Yeah. So what's interesting about that is, that first year Raw Sucker Football podcast, right? And they're all about 30 minutes, and that's daily during the season, and then 3 times a week in the off season this time of year, right? And so I was able to bring over a decent amount of the audience from ESPN, but I had so many of my buddies were always asking me about fantasy football.
Yeah.
And I might have even talked to John about it before I started. I can't remember. I don't know how I got Evan Silva to be my co-host. I don't remember that connection or how that went down.
It's probably you were formerly in the league, and I think you're the respect you commanded as being a former player.
Right, but I don't even. My point is, I don't even know how I knew him.
Right.
I don't know. I
He
think
was
I was
very
at NBC.
Big force on Twitter.
And he was at Roto World or whatever. So what's so interesting is those years, and then I think it might have been the very next year or 2 years later, I started the Even Money Betting podcast. And that's because it wasn't all my friends. So I probably had, out of like my core high school buddies, 12 of them, probably had 5 that would talk about fantasy a lot and ask me questions. But then there's 2 that would ask me about betting all the time, like all the time. And I thought, I gotta have a betting podcast. So I started Even Money podcast with Steve Fezzik. And what's interesting is that I would say, and maybe you guys have numbers that are similar, but I would say from like 2013 to 2018, maybe the fantasy one was the most popular certain times of year. Like August, it's insane the numbers. We would do these tiers of Evan, and which was like his tiers of each position group, and they would do crazy numbers, like crazy. And then, but I would say ever since PAPSA or whatever it's called, ever since betting became legalized, it feels to me like the fantasy has gone down a little bit, and with every year the betting just keeps growing and growing. And I don't know if you guys have seen similar stuff or not, but the Even Money Betting podcast during the season is easily our biggest show, right? We record it Tuesday mornings. People listen or watch right away. It's probably double anything else we do, is what that betting show is now during the season.
Wow.
What's interesting is that the Raw Sucker Football podcast is pretty much the same numbers year round. And I think maybe part of that is because in the offseason I only do 3, rather than the 5. But that number is very consistent, which, by the way, Brian, what annoys me about it is that a lot of the advertisers only want to advertise during football season. They only want to, and I'm like, listen, it's the same amount of people, but during the season, everybody's trying to advertise on the same show. So maybe I'll have 3 commercials, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
Maybe 4 even in 30 minutes, like a minute, 30 seconds, whatever. In the off season, and that I felt like this past fall, I sold out during the fall, right? Like, so during football season, the show could not take any more ads, right? It was sold out. But then the off season, there will be a couple ad spots available. And like these ad agencies, it's just like, we only can advertise on football shows during football season. It's like, wait a minute. If you advertise in May, it's the same amount of people, but it'll be like the only commercial. Or that and Labatt Blue Light. Like, those are the only 2 commercials they hear the whole show. Like, it's better for you guys. And they just cannot, comprehend that. It's bananas to me.
Man, Ross and I have so much in common, Brian, that I literally wrote down 5 different ways like conversations we could veer off into based on what he just said. I have a high school football story. I have my own ESPN story that's actually very similar. I could talk about my interest level as I've been re-energized to an extent for props, because I used to own playerprops.com, Ross. I'm the first person to register that. It was like 1999. Of course, I like an idiot, I let it go, but that's neither here nor there. So I mean, not a lot of tangents we can go off of, Ross, but
Oh
I
my
also want
gosh, John. That's
I also
unbelievable.
yeah. I also want to touch on like you and I having a lot in common in terms of like having fun with it all because you're doing all the games now in the preseason and beyond in regular season, but mainly in Philly. I see a lot in the preseason, but like you kind of have your thing going here. It's like it's a Madden-esque in terms of like you being yourself, but like it's comedy. So just talk about that approach because especially for me, I'm like, at the end of the day, we're talking about fake football here. All right. I can't take it that serious, but I talk about how, you like to have fun with it.
So you know what's interesting about that too is there's all this conversation about Tom Brady and how well he'll do, right? As a
Yeah.
broadcaster. And I think he'll do well. We were teammates '05 and '06 till I got traded to Cleveland for a conditional 7th round pick, the greatest honor an NFL football player can have bestowed upon them.
Wow.
The vaunted conditional 7th.
Do you know what the pick ended up being? Is anyone of note?
Guess what? Cleveland cut me, so the condition wasn't met.
Oh.
So, dude, Charles Bentley tears his knee up. Cleveland trades for me. This is funny. You guys will appreciate this. I'm competing really to be a backup center guard for the Patriots. '06 training camp, okay?
Yeah.
Behind Dan Copen. And I'm supposed to be second string center that day and get the 2-minute drill. So right before the 2-minute drill starts, the O-line coach tells somebody else, like Gene Murkowski or Russ Hochstein, he's like, Russ, you take the 2-minute drill. And I'm thinking, well, that's not a good sign. That's not a good sign for me at all. Like it's my day. So afterwards, the offensive line gets together and coach talks to everybody. And then he says, Tuck, come here. I was like, yeah. And I'm glad he said that because I was going to talk to him and be like, why did I lose my 2-minute drill? Like that was my opportunity. And it was my day. And he said, so evidently we traded you to Cleveland during practice.
Oh.
And I had already been cut in my career 3 times.
Yeah.
So traded sounded so much better.
Sexier.
I was like, traded? I said, for what? And Scarnecchia said, I don't know, probably a bag of balls. Because that's him. So then I go into the office and like I talk to the Browns and they're like, yeah, we got a flight for you. And I was like, man, I really want to have my car out there. Like I'll just drive over all night. And they're like, no, you don't understand. Like LaCharles Bentley tore his knee up. You're our starting center now. We don't want our starting center, driving all through the night from Foxborough, Massachusetts to Cleveland. They're like, we'll ship your car. And what's interesting is if you get cut, you get nothing. If you get traded, they have to pay all your travel expenses.
Oh, nice.
So they have to pay to ship your car if you get traded.
Right.
It's fun, little things like that, right?
Relocation services.
Yeah. So I fly to Cleveland, and anyway, so I'm a Brown. I start the next 3 preseason games. I thought I played pretty well. I played average. I was an average player.
Yeah.
Final cutdown day, they trade for Hank Fraley from the Eagles and cut me.
Oh.
And I went to Romeo Crennel and what's Phil Savage. I was like, you're cutting me? And they said, yeah, blah, blah, blah. But they wouldn't tell me they were trading for Hank Fraley yet. Because it wasn't official.
You were a pawn.
Yeah, I was like, hold on a sec. I said, how are you going to trade for somebody? And then they come and like, I'm an average player. You traded for me. I came and I did average. I did exactly what you traded for. Like that. Like I gave you guys what you thought you were getting.
Yeah.
And then you cut me. And that was rough. Why was I telling that story?
Yeah.
Brady.
Having
Okay.
fun.
So what's that?
Something about, well, we're talking about broadcasting.
Yeah.
And
So what I
having
was gonna
fun
say
with it
is
all.
he'll
and all
be
that.
good on the preparation. By the way,
Right.
Brian, you don't know me that well. This is like how John and I are. Like we're 19 minutes and we haven't like this is just how I am.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
the one point I was gonna make, I can't tell you, John, how much it means when you say that, when you first of all predicted that I would be good and that you like what I bring to the table. And I've had at least now 5 to 10 people say the Madden thing, which is so humbling. It's not intentional,
Right.
right? But I do think some of the stuff I say is probably because I watched him do a zillion, you know what I mean? Like you can't help
Yeah.
it, right?
Did you
I
ever meet
watched him
Madden?
do a zillion games over the years.
Have you ever met did you meet Madden?
No.
Well,
No, I regret that, and I wish I had. But my point is this, and I'll wrap it up here.
yeah.
Preparation's important, and Tom will be great at that. I do think, though, there's a certain component that's just what's your natural personality. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like
And he's a little
I'm
bit
a
of a prick.
naturally outgoing person.
Yeah.
I like to like people. I think it's funny when I do a game. 95% of the people it feels really like me,
Right.
and 5% don't. Because I think for some people, like my energy and my excitement and my laughing and my humor, I think for some people it's like, whoa, it's like too much for them, right?
Right. Right.
But the way I look at it is if you're doing something that 95% of people are gonna love, like you're never gonna get 100%. Like if you just try to play it safe, you're not going to get 95% of people that really, or 90 or whatever the number that really love you. You got to be who you are. And so I'll be curious to see what Brady's personality is like on the air. But anyway, I appreciate that. I love it, man. Like every time I'm about to complain, I'm like, your 8th grade self would kick your butt right now. Like this
Absolutely.
is unbelievable that you're getting paid to go to this game tomorrow and talk. Like I would complain about travel or whatever.
Right.
Like suck it up, Buttercup.
I don't want to speak for John Madden, but having had a little relationship with John Madden, he somehow he's one of these things like if he gravitated toward you for whatever reason and he liked you, if he liked you, he liked you. And he wouldn't like you unless he could see the authenticity. Like, you were totally 100% being authentic, then the sky's the limit. And I think that's kind of what he liked about me, and I'm sure he would have felt the same way about you. But we should talk a little football here, Ross, not to pigeonhole you into talking about the big uglies. But let's get into it here. And I know you're I do want to focus on the O-line, Ross, because I think it's important. I think we need to isolate the 4 or 5 lines that have really helped themselves this year. And, let's draft accordingly. How about those Pittsburgh Steelers? Are we looking at like a top 10 line, top 7 line here this year?
Well, so in fairness, I have not done my O-line rankings yet, but
Right.
yes. I mean, significant upgrades. They might have gotten 2 of like my 3 or 4 favorite rookies in the draft. I mean, that Fatanu guy from Washington, I love that guy. And then Frazier, a 4-time state wrestling champ, like those guys are both. Here's the thing. They're not just good players, they're badasses. Like, you know what I mean? Like they are Pittsburgh Steelers through and through, and the fans are gonna absolutely love them. And I love that the Steelers are kind of getting back to their identity a little bit, right? Like, let's pound people, let's be more physical. They've always been that way on defense. And, they finally told Najee Harris, he finally watched, some Bam Morris and Barry Foster videos and found out how you run. If you're the Pittsburgh Steelers running back, you go downhill, especially if you're a big guy. By the way, I will say this fantasy nugget. Love the fact that Najee Harris is losing some weight for this year as a contract year.
Sure.
If you took every guy in the offseason that's ever gained weight or
Oh yeah,
lost weight. Okay. And
totally.
like people wrote articles about it. I would buy any guy that ever loses weight and I would sell the guys that gain weight for the most part. I mean, sometimes it works, sometimes it's a benefit, but not always. A
Yep.
lot of times it's not. I love when I read about a guy losing weight. I get a little bit nervous when he's talking about trying to put weight on.
Absolutely. One rare example was that from this last year, Rashad White told me in June that he had packed on like 10 pounds of muscle, but it was to withhold the rigors of, bell cow duty. And that did work. I think he lost a little juice, but I'm with you. By the way, Najee Harris, 11th best explosive run percentage among 68 running backs with at least 50 carries last year per fantasy points data, Brian. So we're even getting slimmer and trimmer, and this backfield can support 2 RB2s under Arthur Smith, who wants to run like we got leather helmets on.
Well, let me ask a question about America's team, but first, let's step aside. More with Ross Tucker from the Ross Tucker podcast after this. All right, Ross, welcome back in. It's the Fantasy Points podcast. Brian Drake, the guru, John Hansen, talking with Ross Tucker. I want to ask you about the Dallas Cowboys. For years, the media has thrown, in our face, shoved down our throat, this is the best O-line in the league. You can run behind them for 1,000 yards. Your grandmother could do it. Well, now we're looking at Tyler Guyton at left tackle, Terrence Steele at right tackle. They lost their center, Biotish. He's out of town. So I think there's some kinks in the armor there. And you're looking at Zeke Elliott, Rico Dowdle, maybe running the ball, for us fantasy guys out there. What are your thoughts on the Cowboys and what they're doing with this O-line?
I don't really know what the Cowboys are doing, period. I really don't understand. I don't know how by far the team that makes the most money and is worth the most money can also be the team that might be the worst contract team in the entire league.
Yeah, because they don't go aggressively, proactively to get the guys locked up long term. They wait too long and pay too much.
I am blown away by the strategy. And Jerry Jones says he wants to see some more hands get played. Like, what I would want to say to Jerry Jones is, what would have to happen for you to not give CeeDee Lamb a new contract?
Exactly.
Does he have to rupture both patella quad tendons? Like what would have to happen for him or like Micah Parsons? Just so everybody knows, and I live near there and I do their preseason games, so I'm biased, blah, blah, blah. But like Micah Parsons and CeeDee Lamb, if they played for the Philadelphia Eagles, would both already be signed through like 2028. Okay?
Oh, yeah.
They would be. They would be. There is no plausible scenario in my mind where the Cowboys let those guys go. It's their best offensive player and their best defensive player, and maybe the best defensive player in the league. I mean, it is rare to see a guy that moves differently than everybody else, and that's what I see when I see Parsons play. I mean, he really, nobody else moves like that guy does. It's just crazy. The amount of guys he makes whiff, like in a close space, it's bananas.
Yeah.
But there's no scenario where the Cowboys let those guys go. So all they're really doing is allowing the price to go up and messing with their salary cap in the process. That's the only thing they're accomplishing. And so what happens, Brian, is you get to the point where you don't want to keep Tyron Smith. You don't want to pay him. You don't want to pay Biotish. And you think we can just fill it with young guys. And to their credit, they've done a really good job drafting offensive linemen, right? Tyron Smith, Zach Martin, even I thought McGovern was a good pick in the 3rd round. He's in Buffalo now. Obviously, Tyler Smith is a really good player. So they're really good at drafting offensive linemen. So they have confidence in themselves there. But I would submit to you, with Guyton at left tackle, and it might even be Cooper Beebe at center. He might be their starting center. That to me is at least one loss. Like if you're starting arguably the 2 most important positions, left tackle and center, you're starting 2 rookies. I would be shocked if they did not lose a game because of those 2 guys. Maybe Beebe messes something up mentally. maybe Guyton blocks the wrong guy or just gets beat. Those are tough positions to play right away. And it's not like these guys are like top 20 picks. Guyton was like the 10th tackle off the board, and Cooper Beebe played guard at Kansas State. So, they'll still be a pretty good team this year. But my theory on the Cowboys this offseason is that it's like that Seinfeld episode where George Costanza decides to do the opposite of anything he's ever done in life because it's never worked for him.
Yep.
I feel like Jerry Jones and Stephen Jones were out to dinner, and they're like, you know what? We've been trying to make the team better. We got Gilmore and Brandon Cooks last year. We did this, and we still just lose in the playoffs every year. And they were like, what if we just did the opposite? What if we did nothing to get better? What if we just let some of our best players leave? Like, maybe it's just crazy enough it might work. That's what they've done this offseason. They've done nothing to get better, and they've lost guys. You can't argue they have a better team. You can't argue that they're deeper. Now, maybe they'll be better, maybe they'll play better, and maybe the playoff game will go differently this year. But it is, if I'm Jerry Jones, he's like in his 80s now. Like, dude, if I'm ever in my 80s and I own an NFL team and I'm worth billions and billions, just for the record, just write this down. We're going all in that year. And then the next year we're going all in again. I'm going all in till I die. Okay, that's what that would be my theory at that point.
I'm short, I'm balding, I live with my parents, and I'm unemployed. Like, let's go on a date.
And the girl's like, hey,
what was the response? She goes, I'm Elizabeth.
Ross, what about the Tennessee Titans? This line was an absolute shite show last year. Even though Derrick Henry ran pretty well, it looked bad, but Skoronski looked like that was a good pick. Obviously, now J.C. Latham, we bring in Cushenberry. Have we done enough here in Tennessee? Because this is an interesting offense with Brian Callahan moving over. They're going to actually be into the forward pass when you look at what they've done, bringing in Calvin Ridley and Tyler Boyd. And I love Tajay Spears. What do you think of the Titans O-line?
Well, so first of all, I respect the additions they've made at the receiver, because they need to decide at the end of this year whether Levis is the guy or not.
Yeah.
And by the way, I thought he did some really positive things last year. I called their game against the Steelers. I was like, damn, this guy's pretty good. I mean, he would stand in there. He would deliver. Some quarterbacks, you can tell it's just too big for them. It's just going too fast for them. That was not, like, to me, and he wasn't CJ Stroud, but Levis looked like he belonged. Levis looked like he belonged more than Bryce Young did. I can tell you that much.
A lot to work with physically, for sure.
Yeah, Levis looked like he belonged. So I like that they brought in these receivers to make sure that Levis had enough around him so that they could see what they had in him. It's interesting, John, when you mentioned their offensive line, you didn't mention their biggest addition. It's Bill Callahan as the offensive line coach. That is huge. Guys, I had 9 different offensive line coaches in the NFL. When I tell you there's a big gap between the really good ones and the really bad ones, it's big and it's significant. And it's hard to quantify what that means in terms of wins and losses, but it is definitely a factor. I mean, definitely.
Like a guy like Munchak.
I think that sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry to cut you off, but a guy like Munchak, like wherever he goes, it's like, okay, they're going to have good O-line play now.
It's unbelievable. And think about how much that's worth to a franchise.
Yeah.
So when's the last time a team had good O-line play and they sucked? Never. Exactly. There's never a team where you're like, man, they got the best O-line in the league. I'm shocked they're 4-13. That's never happened. That's not a thing. Right?
Jeff Stoutland stays with the Eagles, no matter who's the head coach. Jeff Stoutland's your offensive line coach.
Right. And the Eagles are always at least pretty good. And the one year they weren't, 2020, they had so many O-line injuries. They had guys, Jamon Brown, they signed him on Tuesday. He was starting on Sunday. And that's why they always draft him. That's why they always keep 10, because they decided we're never going to let that happen again. We're never going to let that happen again. So I think Callahan is a significant addition in Tennessee, a significant addition. And by the way, the whole thing, like, I didn't know that Vrabel was going to be out of there, but when they signed Andre Dillard last year, Andre Dillard is the exact antithesis
Right.
of what Mike Vrabel wants in a football player.
Yeah.
So the fact that they
Bust.
signed him last year to a good contract, I was like, there's no way Vrabel signed off on that. This
Right.
is Rand Carthon, and he and Vrabel are not on the same page because it's just that would not have been a guy that Vrabel would have been like, yes, let's get. He's just not a physical guy. Like that's just not what he's about, and that's the opposite of how Vrabel feels.
I think that disconnect started with the AJ Brown trade too.
Oh gosh, well that was before Rand Carthon.
That was actually Robinson, right?
Yeah.
But there's a schism there with the organization.
Memorial Day weekend, that's when everyone's listening to this podcast. And so we're enjoying a couple of beverages outside. Something you're known for, and I've sent some tweets your way, is hashtag ShowMeYourBeer. John talked about how fun you are in the booth, and that's something you've brought to social media. Not only are you talking about great press food, in these boxes, but you're having people send beers to you. I want to know, John, I want to know, Ross, what are you drinking on Memorial Day weekend? I know Ross is an IPA bro like me. And John, we talked about that last night. You could do without those pale ales, but what are you drinking
I'm a
this
lager
weekend?
guy. It's probably a little pretentious, but my favorite beer really is Peroni, which is absolutely
Italian
delicious. It's much like a Stella Artois, but I am a lager guy all the way.
You know what's interesting? I am an IPA guy. And I've been such an IPA guy for so long that it's almost I'm enjoying other beers now. That reminds me, I need to reach out to Troy Aikman because Troy Aikman, name drop, Troy Aikman has this beer called 8 Lager. And and he sent me a case of it, and it's good. It's like organic,
Okay. All right.
90 calories, but it's tasty. Like it's got a nice flavor to it. So what I do now is I'll have an IPA or two, and then I'll switch to like a refreshing like Labatt Blue Light, which is my sponsor. Delicious. Love Labatt Blue Light.
Living in upstate New York, we get a lot of it up here.
Where do you live?
I live in Syracuse.
So gosh, yeah, of course, yeah. It's so I love when I was a player with the Bills, Fridays after practice we would go to the Big Tree Inn, on a Friday, and we would get wings, chicken fries, which were absolutely delicious. It's like French fries, but chicken, but it was like the texture of like a really good chicken nugget, but in the shape of a long fry. It was so good. And the entire table, be the O-line and Drew Bledsoe, the entire table after like an hour and a half would be Labatt Blue and Labatt Blue Light. I'm telling you, 30 to 40 bottles easily in an hour. And Bledsoe would just pick up the tab. It was amazing.
Wow.
So yes, I love me some Labatt Blue Light now for sure.
I just find the lager to be a lot more refreshing.
Yes. So and I like that on a hot day, and I also like it after. You know what beer I like? My buddy's really into Modelo. I like a nice Modelo.
Modelo is a lager.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I like Modelo's too.
That's huge. That took over last year for a period. It passed Bud Light as the #1 beer in the United States.
It's unbelievable, right? I feel like I never even heard of Modelo like 5 years ago or 10 years ago, and now it's so popular.
I went to a Dodgers game a few years back, and I walk into this, like gas station or something. I'm getting some beers for the parking lot. And I walk in, and it's all Modelo. I'm like, you don't see that in upstate New York. Like I said, it's all, Bud Light, Blue Light, Miller Light, stuff like that. And then it was like, it's all Modelo and Corona. So it's a whole different world out there. Well, let's talk also about, if we're out there grilling and cooking this weekend, and you're all about the press box food, who's got the best and who's got the worst press box food in the NFL?
Good question. It is funny, by the way. This is very good for me. Anytime it reinforces that you guys notice that I do the Show Me Your Beer and the hashtag Tuck Spreads, like that just reinforces it. Like it's a thing. And I've been able to monetize both of those at times, which is just like, I just put a picture of my beer on social media and I can monetize that, or like
Yep.
tuck spreads, you know?
It's consistency, Ross. That's your key word. That's your word. Consistency.
Consistency, and anybody can send you a beer, so the algorithm likes it. And then people like to look at food videos. They're like, and they're genuinely curious about what gets served in these stadiums. Like,
Yeah.
it's so I would tell you my favorite place to go is Lambeau.
Wow.
In particular for a noon game, a noon kick, because you get there at 9 a.m. They've got 2 guys running the omelet station. Okay. So right when you get there, don't have breakfast at the hotel. Wait till you get there, omelets. Go down on the field, talk to some players, talk to some coaches, whatever. Come back up. They'll have pulled pork and mac and cheese, probably the best salad bar in the league. They always have Coke Zero, which is critical. Like, it tastes like Coke, but it's 0 calories. Like, I don't understand people that drink Diet Coke or regular Coke now. Like, what are we even doing? What, it's called Coke Zero. It's been around for a while now. Anyway, they have that. And so what I do is I get a whole plate of the pulled pork and I put the mac and cheese on top. I'm at the stage of my life where mac and cheese is more like a condiment or like a topping for me. Like, what do you like? You don't have mac and cheese for dinner. Like, what are you, 8 years old like my daughters? You don't I'm gonna have mac and cheese. No. There needs to be a protein involved, and you mix the mac and cheese in with the protein, please.
You're doing pretty well. You must work out a lot, Ross. I mean, how often
Twice
do you
a day.
exercise? How often?
Twice a day,
Yeah, because you
unfortunately.
really have avoided the dad bod thing, which I had a dad
I'm
bod at
trying.
like 24.
With the beer and the food does not help. I was just at a college graduation party that was at a brewery. So I had a beer. I had like 5 slices of Meat Lovers pizza. But anyway, to finish up the Lambeau thing, halftime, which is tougher now because they made it shorter, 2 brats at halftime.
Oh, yeah.
2 brats. One with the bun, one without the bun. I don't really need the bun, but it does make it a little bit better. Got to have the spicy mustard.
Yeah.
Anyway, I leave Lambeau fat and happy.
Nice.
Man.
Nice.
And who's the worst? I'm going to guess
Worst,
because they're
yeah.
a cheap franchise, the Bengals.
Bengals are okay. The worst, it's actually might have changed now with the new ownership. The worst was always Washington.
Yeah.
It was always Washington. They made clear upgrades last year on the new owner, including like they had like an ice cream box, like where you could grab like frozen ice creams. It's so funny because I'm like kind of tongue in cheek, but kind of not. The press box food is a reflection on the organization, right? It is.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
like anything else in life, right? So you have these
like the
people
hors d'oeuvres
coming to
you
your-
serve at a dinner party. Like, you know.
You have these people coming to your stadium. These are the people that are the voice of the team to the public, right? And if you stink, they're going to say you stink. And if you're good, they're going to say you're good. But there's also stuff in the middle. But also, why wouldn't you want to put your best foot forward?
Yeah.
It's almost like Daniel Snyder said, I hate the media. Screw those guys. Give them the worst food you got. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Whereas other organizations are like, you know what? Like, why would we try to be bad at anything? Like, why don't we try to be good at everything we do?
Those scum, the media.
So true.
We want to be respectful of your time here, Ross. Thanks for joining us here on this fantastic Memorial Day weekend. I want to, though, hit on the NFL is going to be streamed on 5 different new platforms this year. I mean, there's Netflix, there's ESPN Plus, there's Amazon, Pornhub, wherever they're putting games this year. So is this a good thing for the NFL, for the fans, for the growth of the game? Because, I mean, it's going to cost you a zillion dollars to watch all these games nowadays.
I don't know how you argue it's a good thing for the fans to have to, if they want to watch every game, to have to subscribe to all these different services. I think that's a hard argument to make, but they're not really making that argument, right? Like, it's a good thing for the league. And remember, I'm a former player, right? The players get 48.5% of every dollar. So it's like people are like, oh, they're making the players play on a short week on Christmas. Yeah, for $150 million. $150 million. And only 4 teams have to do it. Okay? So $150 million. So the players get almost 50% of that. So $75 million goes to the players for 12%, 4 of the 32 teams having to play on a short week, a game they already have to play. It's not like it's an extra game. They're signed up for 17 games. Okay, like they're playing 17.
Chuck Bednarik played both ways, guys.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, that's why I laugh about, the extra game. Do you realize if you went in the locker room, okay, on January 3rd, after week 18, and you went to the teams that didn't make the playoffs, and you're like, guys, we can play one more next week, and everybody gets another paycheck. These guys are making, like, if you make 1.7 or you make 1.8 million, right?
Yeah.
You get $100,000 a week. Every guy in the locker room, almost every guy would be like, it's the end of the season. They're not going to really make you practice hard because they know you're kind of beat up and sore.
Mm-hmm.
You have the next 7 months to do nothing, 6 months to just let your body heal. Every guy would be like, another $100,000 for 2 more days of practice and 1 more game? Yes.
And it's direct deposit. Don't even have to go to the bank. It just shows up in your bank account.
And if you're with Washington, it's not direct deposit. It's a paper check because I think they hope that people forget to deposit them. And it's the last day they're legally allowed to give it to you. So they pay you for a 2-week period.
Ooh, wow.
And they pay you the last day that they're legally allowed to pay you for that prior 2-week period to get every cent of interest that they can possibly get. And they did not have direct deposit. They probably have to now, but they didn't back then.
Evil. That's pure evil right there.
Jeez Louise.
That's nasty.
Well, a lot of fun here with our good pal Ross Tucker. If you're following him or you're not following him on the old Twitter machine or X or whatever you're calling it this weekend, at Ross Tucker NFL. Want to make sure you're checking out the Ross Tucker podcasts. He's on Westwood One. He's on CBS. You're filling in for Dan Patrick here and there. I love catching on there, with the Danettes. It's just a great pleasure to have you here on the Fantasy Points podcast, Ross. We appreciate your time here and getting ready for that 2024 season. But before we get to there, we're going to have some nice summer beers beforehand. So thanks for the time, my friend.
Hey, my pleasure. Absolutely. Congratulations to all the success you're having. And make sure everybody listening or watching, check out the Fantasy Feast with my guy Joe Dolan from FantasyPoints.com. You probably heard of it. He is fantastic. John recommended him, and John, you hit it out of the park. There's a guy that A, loves it, and B, has the combination of the knowledge and preparation plus the delivery. Yeah. I mean, you're not even really supposed to swear on my shows. And last week, he called Malachi Corley an asshole twice on my show. I'm like, Joe, what are we doing here? He's like, that guy is an asshole. And I mean it as a compliment. He is an asshole. I was like, all right, cool. I like him already.
Was an asshole too in that regard. Right?
Thank you, guys.
You got it. You're the man, Ross.